Much, Gav.
Thank you. Hello?
We haven't worked this out at all, have we? So we don't know where we're going to start.
No, when we arrived, there was a third chair, and we thought...
Someone's interviewing you, they said. And then they said,
us.
no, they're not.
No.
So we might just sit here in silence and let's consider it art. No, so let's start. I'll tell you what, I'll throw a question at you, which is, there is a lot of talk about the fact that many comedians, entertainers, artists are neurodivergent.
Yeah.
I've got a theory of why that would be. What about you?
I think it's the same reason why you get a lot of autism in high-level mathematics. I think there's something about having a different view on things. I think there's ADHD and autism both come with a good supply of unusual thoughts and sideways thinking. I think autistic people are more likely to have accidentally made people laugh by saying something quite true and quite blunt without realizing they weren't supposed to. And then they go, oh, I got a laugh for that. Oh, that's interesting. People think my opinions are just funny. And you sort of develop from there. Whereas I think ADHD, it's a way of sort of embracing aspects of ADHD in a way that's slightly different. But those are just different routes to the same end result, which is it's a way of controlling people's reactions to your weirdness. And it's a way of choosing a lifestyle where you get to wake up at the time you want to, or you don't have to try and fit into an office full of people that you would have a breakdown trying to fit into. So it's self-employment and monetizable weirdness.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think one of the things is, and I think both with autism and ADHD, which is nothing is taken as read. Yeah. So if someone says, we're going to go and do this, you immediately think, hang on a minute, but why are we doing this? So a lot of the rules of society, for instance, seem absolute bunkum, as indeed I think many of them are. And so it means that you're already in that, that whole comedian, hey, what if stuff is actually you are going, why is it like this? And what if it was like that? And I think it can feel, it's an act of rebellion to, at least for half an hour, 2 hours, whatever, change the world into the shape that you wish it to be, and also to hopefully create the contagion with an audience. Because I know a lot of your work has been, very specifically your solo shows talking about different forms of kind of autistic experience and of reading of the world. Yeah. And I think a lot of my shows, even when I didn't realise it, it's like I remember one of the first times someone came up to me and they were crying and they said, I've never heard my head on stage before. Because they just suddenly heard this person who was just going off on all these, and they went, oh, but that's how my mind works. And I love it when it's children especially. Yes. Because that bit where a child is very often thinking, just got to keep it all in because I'm such a strange child. And then they go, look, that person actually makes a living out of being as strange as what lives in my head.
I think that's definitely part of the appeal. Do you think that you could draw a line of sort of ADHD-based comedians, and there's yourself and maybe Ross Noble and Lee Evans, and the sort of brain leaping about, if not physical leaping about comedians. And then on the other side, I think it's not watertight, but it's a reasonable proposal that observational comedy, as we know it now, is sort of invented by Jerry Seinfeld in the 70s and 80s. He is self-identified as autistic. Unluckily for him, he self-identified in the noughties when it was seen as an offensive thing to do, so he walked it back, but he's now going back to it. And his comedy and all the most well-received routines I've ever done that are observational have been the most autistic ones in hindsight. Stuff to do with food issues, text issues. His rhetoric is autistic. What's the deal with? What's the matter with these people? Why can't they see? Why would you do that? Who are these people? It's someone who doesn't understand.
So what would you say, looking back at your work, are there certain points where you go, I now understand? Because I think it's a very important thing just for anyone who may be kind of new to some of these conversations, which is, for instance, the reason that we now say, autistic person rather than person with autism and a lot of the definitions of ADHD is they're not a separate thing to who you are that gets carried with you. They are your thinking, and they run to, you can't, because someone asked me the other day doing an event, they said, if you could, do you wish you didn't have ADHD? And I said, that's literally saying, if you could, do you wish you didn't exist? And I don't know how you feel about that in terms of with autism.
Yes, it's the same thing, yeah. It's like saying, well, what if you were born somewhere else and also had a different set of parents? You go, well, I don't know. Then I'd be, just why would you, to say, would you like to be Tom Cruise? Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
No, I don't think that's a maybe. I do not want to be that at all. Tom Cruise is the Coldplay of acting. He does it all well and right and everything, but there's something which suggests to me that he's not real. He's not. Do you know what I mean? There's a certain quality that comes, which is, and I have nothing against either. Well, I'm not that keen on Scientology actually, but but it is that thing where you go, because I find that in performers, and again, I wonder if from your, when I watch artists or performers or whatever it might be, I really, really, really have to believe that they mean it, and I think neurodivergent people are sometimes very good at spotting people and going, "This isn't real. This is not."
Yeah. Have you ever had that experience of spotting that in someone in a social situation and going, this is a dead-eyed sociopath, there's something wrong with this guy?
We weren't going to talk about Jimmy Carr. I mean, I think I look back now, and all of my friends, of course, I don't know how much you found this with you, but all of my friends, all my closest friends are neurodivergent, autistic, or ADHD, or both. And I think one of the reasons was because they, like we did, because we've never met before. This is the first time we've ever met. We ate some food and we chatted a little bit, and you kind of start off at really weak 5 of the conversation. You don't do the, hello, how are you, where do you live? You go straight into something you've just seen or found or something you want to share or an idea that's in your head. And I think, with someone like Josie Long or Stuart Lee, again, we've always had that level of what other people would consider to be strange passion.
Yeah.
Because I think passion is something, again, which is looked at with great suspicion, I think, in kind of a lot of our society, which is, I certainly found when I interviewed a lot for the book that I wrote, a lot of the people that I interviewed would have this moment where they would go, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm banging on a bit. And I'd say, well, if you've ever seen my act, I'm not the one to sit on a high horse and judge you on that. And secondly, I said, well, you're not banging on. You're being really fascinating. But it made me realise how many, neurodivergent people are kind of knocked back down when the excitement of an idea, the excitement of existence starts to pour out of them.
You get trained to apologise, yeah. It's one of the things that probably has, if you grow up knowingly or not knowingly autistic or ADHD, it probably has the strongest knockback effect on you socially, which is these things that are in your life that you think are so exciting that it's almost like telling people that the house is on fire, it's so interesting, are incredibly dull and annoying to other people. And you just, that kind of cognitive dissonance is unbearable and it's really hard to comprehend. It's almost like people saying, well, no, I don't eat food ever. I don't like it, so I just drink water. You go, but what do you, I don't understand how you're alive. And they think you're an insufferable nerd because you keep going on about Beatles or whatever.
Yeah.
So no one's enjoying this interaction. No one's understanding each other. And then it's that from 4 till 18. And then let's see how you do with your confidence levels.
I'm so glad you brought up Beatles, because that's one of my favourite stories of Charles Darwin, is when Charles Darwin, who, like a lot of those kind of naturalists of the time, he would just go out into the fields all the time, and he went into some woods, and he found this beetle, and he went, oh my God, I think this is a beetle that's never been placed in a book before. I don't think anyone knows about this beetle. And then he looked down, he went, oh my goodness, there's another beetle that's entirely different, and I don't think has ever actually been, no one knows about that either. And then he found a third beetle and didn't know what to do now, and so he placed one of the beetles in his mouth very carefully and then grabbed the other beetle, but the beetle he placed in his mouth let out some lactic acid, which gave him such a shock that he dropped all his beetles. So I hope that helps. But that is,
See, that's a good fact.
Yeah, you see, that's what I love, and it is the joy to me. This is what we're fighting against. Is I think so many people. I've met hundreds upon hundreds of people since writing this book, and I've had so many conversations, and this thing where one of the freedoms that I think comes with diagnosis, and it may be self-diagnosis, that might be enough for some people, I think it can be very useful, official as well perhaps, but it is that bit where they go, do you know what, all my weird is actually all right. And actually, it's quite, because I was out in, have you been to Wellington in New Zealand?
No.
Right, it's, I'm going to mention some other places, just see how much better travelled I am than you. No, no, but I went there, and when I talked with Professor Brian Cox, surprisingly, he's quite neurotypical in the ways that he behaves. He often says to me things like, no one understands what you're talking about. And I'm kind of like, you're a particle physicist. But so it means that if I go out for a meal, we have to have normal conversations like men have. And like, oh, yes, the dividends were very good. Actually, my wine collection is Jeremy Clarkson's Farms new series, blah, blah,
Does
blah.
he talk about football?
No, I don't think he does football. He's Oldham. He normally talks about wine, international affairs, and a very interesting article in the Financial Times. And then we went to Wellington and we went to Weta, which is this incredible special effects place, which was basically these two people who worked with Peter Jackson on low budget stuff.
Oh, and the big workshop. Where they make
it's
all
like
stuff.
it's one of New Zealand's biggest industries. Is now Weta, the special effects place.
Yeah.
And immediately that I was there, having had a year of having to try and sit through normal conversations, here was a non-binary blacksmith, and they were explaining to me how to fashion a specific steel sword which is most useful for an elf. And I was like, this is going to be safe here. This is going to be a good place. Oh, yeah. And you could just talk immediately to anyone about whatever. I was given Peter Cushing's face as a gift. Not the original one, that's still on him. But it was like, it's that bit, isn't it? And I'm sure you must have it, where you suddenly go, it's okay here. I can explode like fireworks however I wish.
Yeah, I don't even mind, even something like talking about international affairs or wine or even football as someone who really does not like a lot of the football culture, but there's a difference between talking to someone who's a nerd about it. If I can smell special interest on their breath, then I'm happy to go in on it, But if it's just like, yeah, that should be good, that one, next week, look forward to that, then why are we talking at all? Why don't we just think on our own and look at the wall? There's no point in this. I have no interest in this at all. If you're not going to do something properly, don't think about it and have strong views and a deep interest, then I don't really see what you get out of it.
Do you have a favourite wall?
Wall.
No, wall.
Oh, wall.
Yeah. Because one of my favourites is Darlington Station. Because if you've ever been there, you'll normally be delayed. And on platform 2, there's just it's just red brick with little portholes at the top. And I remember one day just staring at that wall and thinking of all the hands that were involved and all the different things that were involved. And this is part of the thing that I think has come with the freedom of losing my anxiety and understanding my mind, is that I feel no shame at having a series of favourite walls. And I hope all of you can feel that freedom one day as well.
See, I was very fortunate growing up, is that my parents largely agreed with my observations on things. And so we all agreed that we were fine and everyone else was insane. So I was fortunate to not be undermined in the home in that sense. Whereas I know some autistic people where they'll have allistic parents who will be like, oh yeah, the weird kid, And I can't imagine that, because my whole thing was, well, I can't be insane because I've explained this whole thing to my mum or my dad or both, and they both pretty much see what my point. So I'm not mad, but I'm mad out there. And that was the mystery, was why am I mad out there? But I was lucky enough to not be undermined in that sense, where I have friends who are autistic who were undermined by their mum or their dad or whoever. Growing up, and that does create that shame, I think, yeah. Whereas I just think everyone else is wrong.
Well, I think that
which is also slightly, it's not a great quality maybe, but
I
makes
think
life
what
easier.
You've just said there is it shows why we need to reframe these things as differences rather than disorders.
Yeah.
Because I think a disorder is much easier for outside society. It's much easier to go, oh, there's something wrong with Pierre's brain, actually, so he's broken, as opposed to there's something different about his brain, and it's not actually a broken thing. It's just a different way of viewing and perceiving the world and receiving the world. And I think that requires a greater level of, well, it requires a great level of empathy. And of course, one of the most ironic things is, for years, people that say autistic people don't have empathy. And then it turned out that people who thought they had normal brains didn't really know how to empathize with autistic people. So, those kind of things I think are really fascinating.
I think one of the differences between the way that ADHD and autism, one of the differences between the ways that they are treated and will have to be a difference going forward, is that there is not a category of people with ADHD that are legally profoundly disabled. And so the difference is in the rhetoric is that one of the things that you do lose by scientifically correctly merging Asperger's into autism generally is that you have a comms problem with the public. because it's much easier for me to say yes that it's a difference, but I don't have meltdowns that mean I am unsafe around my carer. I can read and write. I didn't have delayed speech, etc. I don't have an attendant intellectual disability, which obviously doesn't come with autism, but it is attendant. And that is already a bit of a problem with autism, is that especially parents of kids who are, I guess with the DSM-5 categorization, it's autism level 2 or 3. They're finding that they're getting knocked back by schools or councils or people writing in articles and things saying, well, I've seen a bunch of you guys on TV, you love science, you're fine. And you say, no, not fine. We actually need quite a lot of help, with care and with mobility or anything else like that. But that's the danger of marketing it too much as a fun difference.
Well, it's that thing. It's not to say it's a fun difference. Yeah. It's to say that I think that the moment that we turn it into something which is just you are. When we turn it into something you are wrong, and as we know, some of the generations that were never diagnosed with autism, I was chatting to a mother the other day. She said, I feel so guilty because my son is in his 30s now. Looking back, he's clearly autistic. He's kind of fine with it, and he doesn't want to be diagnosed or whatever. She says, but I think he could have had a better life. Yeah. I said, but of your generation, you were used to the fact that if someone was diagnosed with autism, that was it. Now you can just go and sit in that corner. Yeah. And that's part of it. And I think you're right, that the broadness of the conversation, because autism, it's such a broad, there's a great shop in Shoreham by Sea, which I actually dedicated the book to the shop called Sold, which is for people with learning differences. And nearly everyone who works in the shop has autism, is autistic rather. And they, some people will never have independent lives. Yeah. But every time I visit, I see the change in who they are now allowed to be. And you see the socialization. You see, one of my nieces is amazing with. She's not trained in any special way, but it turned out she's just fantastic at helping bring out young autistic people 4, 5, or 6. And again, all of these people who basically have been told they will never talk, they will never do this, they will never do that. Yeah. And to actually go, no, we need to build a world that finds out where the limitation might actually be, as opposed to the limitation which is thrust upon them by the world. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yes, yeah, I think that's right. And also, doctors' predictions are not, the word of the Lord. Temple Grandin is famous for, she only started speaking when she was 11, and she's a public academic author, and I can't remember his name, but the Cambridge professor who was non-verbal autistic, he's just appointed in the last year. Is non-verbal autistic, and like you say, that's it for life. Now he's a professor at Cambridge, and he only started speaking at 11 or 12. If you write people off, that's the difficulty of you have to treat everyone as if that is going to happen, even though these are relatively rare cases. But because you never know, you can't afford morally not to at least give them a go and put them through these programs. Or it's. I don't know what you do with the whole debate about ASD 1, 2, and 3. The trouble is that we had a good 15, 20 years of Asperger's syndrome kind of marketing and PR, brand awareness, cut through, like Coca-Cola. And if you said to a bloke in a pub, Asperger's, they'd go, oh, yeah. But if you say ASD 1, nothing. And now it's ASC 1, because you shouldn't say disorder, you should say condition. And it's all very well, and well done the medical profession for getting more and more accurate with their science and coming up with these lovely terms that aren't stigmatizing, but the rest of us have to learn them, and then the rest of us have to tell everyone else about the bloody things. So if a company changes its name every month, the product will not be successful. And you're trying to constantly raise awareness and explain things to people, and the more you change the name, the more they'll just give up and go, I'm not interested in this anymore. You've made me bored. I have my own life. That's one of the reasons I tried desperately to make the book funny, because I thought no one's going to read this out of the kindness of their heart. Not unless they have a personal reason to.
Oh no, readers are kind.
Readers are self-selecting as kind.
Yeah, that's true. We'll find that out after this event, won't we? And but I want to also go. I suppose because I didn't read the program, so I'm not entirely sure of the theme of what we're talking about. But I believe creativity was one of the things.
Yes.
So when I go back actually to something I asked you and then changed the question halfway through, which is of course very typical in itself, which is when you look back at certain jokes or certain routines you had, what are your ones where you kind of go, oh, I now see how that perspective worked so well because of my the eye that comes from your neurodivergence?
All of it. Is to an embarrassing degree. I look back through all of my routines I'd written, and every routine might as well have been, hello, I have autism. There's a routine about food textures. There's a routine about my ex-girlfriend getting annoyed at my face for not being excited enough. There was it's genuine. It was like you could have used my back catalogue of stand-up routines as an NHS checklist. It was mad. It was like looking through the Matrix. It was almost embarrassing. Where I thought, oh, I don't actually have interesting ideas. I just have been one by one listing autistic problems through the medium of observational comedy, and now until finally it's reached an apex where I get diagnosed. Matt, it's like an art project. Crazy.
So, but at what point, because I'm interested in how the audience received it, because I think of sometimes some of the things, like one of the things that I think has led over the last 15 years to where I've now ended up in terms of understanding myself and diagnosed and all that kind of stuff, came out of one night I walked on stage and one of my first questions was, how many people here, when you're holding a baby near a stairwell or an open window, suddenly have a little thought where you go, oh, I think I just imagined throwing the baby out the window. I think I've got a desire to throw babies out the window. I don't think I should be holding Mary's baby. Mary, would you like to take the baby out? And I would ask the audience, and I would go through all these different things, and I'd say, who's had those thoughts? And some people would put their hands up, and then I would, sometimes no one would. And then I'd pick on one person with their hand up, and I'd say, now I have to warn everyone I have to tell the people the truth about you. You are the safest pair of hands to hold a baby. And then I would explain to the audience that those thoughts, those impulsive thoughts, are actually public information films. So when you're holding a baby by an open window or a cliff, your brain makes a little film that goes, you're holding a baby by a cliff. Don't throw the baby over the cliff. But it's delivered so quickly that the brain confuses it for a desire.
Yeah.
And when I did that, that was when I started noticing people would come up. In the end, it ended up being like an hour long because all these bits, because everyone had a different story. And everyone had kept that in their head. So I'm interested in terms of like with your stand-up, those bits that you look back and you think, all of this is about autistic perception of the world.
Yeah.
What was the kind of different receptions you would get?
I could never get people to enjoy the bit about misophonia of people making eating sounds. I could get some people, but it would be like a 1 in 50 of the crowd, and that's not enough to get escape velocity for a joke. But the routine about all the food in this country being wet, that worked and continues to work. So yeah, I think the wetness of the food is undeniable.
Ryvita.
I've never seen a British person eat Ryvita.
Fair enough. I do because I'm a touring comic, which means I eat Ryvita and, as I've said to you before, cold tins of minestrone soup in a Travelodge and go, I'm living a life.
There's the wet. You've got a
There's
tin
the
of
wet, but I don't always have them together. Sometimes I might have dry Ryvita, yeah. I think it might turn out that all of your routines are nothing more than a tissue of lies. But
they were always there.
But that's so that, and then once you understood, once you then found out that you were autistic, how did that empower your writing and your creativity? Because I would imagine that did it bring any doubt? Were there points where you start to think, hang on a minute, oh God, all this stuff could have been working much better, but I've been presuming that other people are experiencing the world as I am? Or did you feel really empowered and go, right, now I have even more understanding of...
Both, because I've even more understanding to cut that bit because they'll never understand it. So sort of empowering and disempowering. I had an experience where I went back and did a rowdy Christmas gig at a comedy club in Birmingham. And Christmas gigs in comedy are the worst, where people will have Coke visibly smeared under their nose. A bunch of people got thrown out that night for homophobic heckling, and they came back and threatened to burn the club down, and then tried to break back in again. I saw a woman be sickened to her own tits. It's bad, this country is badly behaved at Christmas, for Jesus. And I was on stage trying to do my routine I have a long KFC routine. And I thought, even at their drunkest, these people will remember KFC with fondness and have had it. Let's rely on this. And it was just seeing like tables of people like passing out or just talking or on their phones, or a few people listening, but a sea of just, like gin lane. And I just thought, why am I bothering trying to reach across this huge divide? This will never, this internet connection will never be set up. This email will never arrive. A couple of tables are getting it, but this is a waste of both of our time. And I realized how much of my 20s I'd spent trying to bridge that gap.
That's what I would totally... I was thinking, did you ever think at that gig, rather than do the KFC routine, just entirely jettison words altogether and just see if they even know someone? But actually, no, it's a bit of whoa. They were now, yeah, yeah,
I think it would have been better received.
I'm going to get a lot of Christmas gigs off the back of that little routine, I think.
What about you? Did you find that realizing that there was this thing behind the way that your mind worked, did that change the way you structured shows, or did it back up the way you had already been structuring it?
What it allowed me to realize was I should never have been attempting to structure, because I always used to come off, I mean, literally till 4 years ago, I don't know how many thousands of gigs I've done. Every single one was a failure. Didn't matter if I got an encore, didn't matter how well it went, didn't matter how many people said, I want to buy you a drink. It's like that thing, I don't know if you used to have it, where someone comes up to you and goes, oh, I really enjoyed that show. And the first thing you say is, oh, yeah, sorry, it wasn't very good tonight. And they go, no, I really enjoyed it. No, you couldn't have done, because it was awful. And then you slowly, rather than just accept a compliment, you spend half an hour persuading someone that you've stolen their money that evening and they've had an awful time. And that seems to be...
And they will believe you.
Yeah.
Because they go, well, you're the chef. I thought it was a nice steak.
Yeah,
you're telling me it was a load of
enjoying
rubbery dog shit. So now I'm furious. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's such a... And now I go on and I don't think about... I've always got an idea of what I think I want to talk about in the broadest sense. And what I rely on is thinking, well, I've filled my head with stuff. And so I'm just going to go, because when I went back, I did a few comedy clubs. I've not done comedy clubs for a while, I've just been doing solo shows. And it was really interesting when the compares would say things like, oh, what routine do you end on? And I would go, oh, I don't know. And they went, what do you mean you don't know? I said, well, at some point I'll see that 40 minutes is up and I'll kind of stop.
I'll depart.
And that bit of not having structure, but my realisation that I hadn't failed the audience by not giving them the show that I thought I was going to do when I was on the train there, because they had not been in my head and they didn't know. So I think that empowerment is something that I really, I walk off, and sometimes I can still find the faults and I can still go, that wasn't good. But the joy, so I now have just joy and love when I'm performing. Whereas before I had a homunculus in my head that was just shouting at me that I was letting everyone down and that this was terrible. And now, when I was doing a thing, do you know Cheeky Keita?
No.
Cheeky Keita's wonderful. One of her things is she, if you ever go to the Edinburgh Fringe and you're being flyered by a large piece of toast, that'll probably be Cheeky Keita. It's one of the things she does. Sometimes she dresses up as the blackness of the beginning of the universe. It's just like, and we were doing a gig and she said, don't seem to be nervous ever before gigs. Why is that? And I said, because I walk out and I'm full of love and I think the audience probably want to have a really nice time. And if we work together and everyone knows that we're having, we're in a safe place where let's just enjoy ourselves and let's talk about crazy things and interesting things. And even then, if someone does heckle, actually quite often the audience are like, oh, what a mean thing to do when we're trying to have a nice time. And I think so that's what I've lost, any sense of the aggression of the audience.
Yeah.
That might happen on a night, I don't know. But overall, I now just go out there and think, I want to have fun and I'm determined to create something that they know I'm putting everything into it, and it's about joy.
Do you think that the hard part because although we're not of the same generation of comedians, we are of the pre-TikTok and Instagram generation. The difference is for us is that if you're on Instagram and TikTok, you can get your specialized audience off the shelf. They've found you, they like your style, they've found you on their phones. Whereas you and I had to learn how to entertain a random selection of the public who are often drunk for years before we gradually amassed a kind of legion of freaks
Yeah.
that would come and see us on our own.
Almost none of them vomiting down their own breasts.
Almost none, yes. Yes.
At
least not in,
yeah, and those who were did it, just because they liked doing it, not because of any. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, but that's one of my. I think with that though comes something else, but which is with the confidence and with the sense of joy. So, because quite often I'll do gigs where a lot of people don't know who I am, because if I go and do a gig just in a library or a community centre in the afternoon, a lot of the people are there because there's free biscuits, and then I just go on and start waffling on about stuff and doing some poems or whatever, telling them some stories. And I find again that if you go out there and you don't react as if you're scared of them, and you go, hello, it's nice to be with you, by the way, I just saw that thing. And they go, oh, okay, we're here not for a fight. Because I think that's one of the big problems with a lot of the way comedy certainly was, the old Jongleurs comedy clubs, stuff like that. It was set up like a fight. The whole of the front row would be picked on, which again actually is one of the really negative things about that is I know a lot of neurodivergent people that it takes a lot of encouragement and persuasion to get them to go to a comedy club, because something like being picked on in the front row for them is just, there's too much anxiety.
And it's worse because those are the clips that go viral on social media.
Yeah.
And it creates this impression in the minds of people that, well, a comedy show is this thing that you go to where you are as cruel as possible to the person on stage, and in response they ruin your life, and it's all really fun and brilliant, and let's go try that. So it creates an environment where the worst people in the world show up. Yeah. And they make that true by being there and behaving in a way that they think is what they're supposed to do. If there were a load of viral TikToks that the thing to do at musicals was to just spill grease all over the aisles and make people fall down, that would start to happen because people would think they were doing the right thing on their first trip to the theatre. So I think comedy's been ruined by viral videos.
I've got such a vivid image of what you've just created there, by the way, with this enormous amount of grease, this kind of road runner scenario with Cameron McIntosh is a really fascinating thing. In terms of the freedom of your, because I think like I've got here, this is it's not come out yet, but this is a proof copy of the book of poetry that I've done, and I've written about 700 poems in the last year. And I don't sit down to write them.
Thing to say.
Yeah, and it's like the most perfect form for ADHD, because a poem you go, oh, that thing's really fascinating. Oh, I really like that. I like the way oh God, I've just thought of a way of explaining that in a few sentences. That I think, oh, and then you write 12 lines and you go, oh, I've seen someone else now, and it doesn't matter. 12 lines is a poem, so you're finished. Whereas writing long books is really difficult, right? and I think a lot of that comes from the fact, and again, thinking about anxiety, is because like certainly my anxiety was, it was all the time. I was anxious all the time. And now I don't have anxiety through a mixture of diagnosis and medication. All of that energy still exists, and it has to be used. And it can be, it's like hypervigilance. So did you have hypervigilance?
Yes, yeah. In certain circumstances I did, yeah.
So you know, if those who don't know, hypervigilance is, it's an increased and sometimes perpetual awareness of the possible threats around you. So when you're walking through the world, you're always thinking, I wonder what's going to go wrong here, I wonder what's going to go wrong there. Yeah. And I think I still have that, but not for the wrong things. So now I have it when I'm stood on Darlington Station platform 2 and I'm suddenly really hypervigilant about that wall opposite, or when we were walking here and we went past all of those, the pavement where all of those flowers were growing out of the cracks, or the thistles that were halfway between being purple and being seeds.
It's sort of mindfulness from a different route, I think. I think a lot of the problems with anxiety and a sense of injustice and things that you get with autism and ADHD are solvable, at least for me, by taking a sort of aggressively Zen outlook on things. But the trouble is that a Zen outlook is also, it's not dissimilar to a nihilistic outlook sometimes. And people don't like it, so I keep it to myself. But one of the reasons I don't get nervous before gigs anymore is because people ask me and I say, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I want it to go well.
But it matters. It's that thing, isn't it? It's the superposition of, it doesn't matter, but I'm still going to do the best that I possibly can. And a lot of people, a bit like I think we were talking before, which is some people are very worried about being diagnosed because they think that they might lose something should their life not have as much pain in it. And I know that might sound odd. It's like there was a woman in the front row of a gig I did recently, and she said to me, do you ever miss your anxiety? And I said, no, but I think you're asking me for a reason. She said, I've lived my whole life with anxiety, and I worry if I lose my anxiety, who am I? Yeah. I said, you are the person that has been very often hidden by the fog. and you have always been there, and this shining, wonderful thing that you are. And when you lose the fog, none of yourself goes. It's merely what has been shrouding you. And sometimes it can be confusing, and sometimes you can instinctually think, I should be anxious now, so I might almost make myself because I just can't believe it's gone. But that freedom is something that I think people can be very anxious about losing their anxiety.
And I think there's anxiety as well about losing identity, where certainly a couple of autistic people, well, one autistic person diagnosed and one person who I would bet a lot of money that they're autistic, but one was worried about this and one was resisting it because they both had, as a coping mechanism, grown up with this self-image as the unique flower. Where, well, no, but the reason that I can't do this, or I have difficulties with this, or it's because I'm a sort of indigo child. You know, I'm this unusual, special thing. And as much as it is a relief to get diagnosed, it is also for someone who's formed that self-image. Well, now you're one of a group, a small group, 1 to 5% of the population, but still a group. Oh no, and that means that whole self-image thing about being a special, marvelous snowflake has to be dismantled, or at the very least caveated quite heavily. With it depends how you view the fellowship of it. I find it a tremendous relief that other people feel the same way, but some people really, really don't like that.
I find that interesting as well, because what I love is the camaraderie that comes from it. Like I found there was a thing that happened to me a while ago where I was kind of getting some weird stuff from the BBC, and it really knocked me. It was like I was doing a festival in Bristol, and a friend of mine, Heidi, said, do you want to come to my house, by the way, because the old woman who used to live here has left loads of books, and I think you will love looking around them. And I knew Heidi was autistic, and I knew that if I was in Heidi's house, 2 neurodivergent people together, just chatting and looking at books and drinking wine and whatever, that would be a good place to be, because that knowledge means... Do you find this? I find that when you get a group of if you get more than 5 neurodivergent people together, by the way, in a pub, take one neurotypical person, because you need them, because every now and again they go, right, everyone, you've opened too many windows and we need to just shut down some of them. And I know we're not going to get to a linear route, but so I always think the composer, the conductor of the, but that thing of, I find there's very little banter in when a bunch of neurodivergent people get together. And there's loads of larking about, there's loads of being silly, there's loads of strangeness and passion and all of that. I wonder if you've had that experience or not.
I think in my experience, there might be banter, but it's external. It's humor about things. It's never interpersonal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right.
It's not a power game.
It's not a power game, or even a kind of like... It's so rare, even in a fun way, to riff on each other, because you're sort of locking in with each other and discussing the outside world, because the unity is here.
Yeah.
That is true. If you get about 10 or more autistic and ADHD people in a pub, you start getting research funding, I think. You get scientific councils start showing up and handing out grants. It's quite dangerous. Yeah, I think that's right. I was interested in your book. You mentioned that you did have a level of banter at home. Mm. And we didn't have that in my house.
When I grew up, there was. I think one of the reasons there was kind of banter within my family and lots of kind of joking was because there was also I'll give you a little bit of the background. Basically, I was in a major car accident just 2 days before my 3rd birthday, and my mum was nearly killed and in a coma for a very long time. And when she left hospital, she was not the same person as the person who'd got in the car that night. And it's, as time has gone on, I've realised how major that was for everyone in the family. But we just kind of got on with it. And I think that was why we had that banter thing. Yeah. Which was, we would never talk about, love would never come up, even though we do love, you know what I mean? It's all that stuff. And I think now, slowly, we're beginning to peel those layers away, because my sister would never have therapy, but she likes driving me to gigs, so that's when I do it. And it is...
You put the therapy into a piece of cheese.
Yeah, basically, that's the... But I think that's why we had banter, and I think a lot of banter, in the same way with comedy clubs, comes from fear. And it's like, this is one of the things that I realised is comedy clubs are a kind of, the comic before they go on stage is, I think, very similar to a lot of people before they open their front door. That bit where you're waiting to open the front door, and sometimes each day the front door is heavier than it was before because you're a little bit more scared, and you go out into the world waiting to be heckled. Yeah. So you've got more aggression than you need in your body, and you've got kind of that fight or flight and all of those things. Yeah. And I think, again, that's one of the reasons that we do really need to get more and more people to understand the incredible diversity of minds that are out there. And that, in fact, it's not just a straight line going neurotypical, neurodivergent. The whole thing is very blurry. It's not, this is autism, this is ADHD, this is dyspraxia. The whole thing is very blurry. But the most important thing to know is one of the major failures, I think, of our society is the failure of those people who think that they are correct to have an empathy to understand those that they just basically refuse to understand, because they wish you to be in the shape that is the best for the society and to keep cranking all the things that need to be cranked, and they don't want you making a fuss in their eyes.
Yeah, it's interesting how often I'm talking here about autistic people level 1, so people like myself who in the past would have been called Asperger's syndrome. If you want a workplace accommodation, it's interesting how much of the accommodations that are refused are costless. E.g., can I wear headphones? Can I sit in a different corner? Can I not be in this room? Or that doesn't cost any money. It's not like even a wheelchair ramp or a taxi to and from, or a carer, or can I work a few hours? Can I have to subsidize? It's absolutely zero cost. All you need is for someone to nod and say yes. And they are refused. And there's something to do with the ego there, maybe of your boss. There's something to do with, oh, well, then everyone will want to wear headphones, and that's bad for neurotypical productivity. But so much of it is actually costless that until you can get across to people the fact that this is not a situation where you need to apply whatever mad precedent-based rules that you're used to, they're just going to keep doing it because it's not about money. It's a misnomer, I think, for a lot of these accommodations. They're often free. They're still refused.
But it's a rules-based culture that to them it's very costly. It's like the fact that people, working from home, which we thought would now increase after lockdown, but many companies have very quickly gone, no, you've got to be here, otherwise we don't know what you're up to. And that's despite the fact there's a huge amount of research building up to show that people are very productive at home, and actually, but it means that you're not being watched all the time. And I think that bit of you've broken the rules. It's like, I think with school, this is where a lot of people, I think, carry their trauma from. And, for young autistic people, where they're told to look me in the eyes when I'm talking to you. And you think about something like that, and you think, well, actually, for some of us, looking someone in the eyes means that we don't hear a word they say because we're concentrating so hard on looking them in the eyes. So you're just there going, looking them in the eyes, I'm looking them in the eyes. They're opening and closing their mouth, I'm looking them in the eyes, I'm looking them in the eyes. I wonder what they're saying, but I am looking them in the eyes. Oh, they've stopped opening and closing their mouth. And, and that kind of, and so all those rules are rules based on very small, in the same fidgeting and all of these different things, which shouldn't be an issue. As you said, quiet places. I had a woman who said, I'm waiting to be diagnosed with autism because until I'm actually diagnosed with autism, my office space won't allow me to go into a quieter area. As you said, how insane is that? That should be available for everyone or anyone who feels they need it.
What's the problem? It's rules-based, but it's based on a kind of panic because the rules are often there for neurotypicals who, if there was some way of measuring it, I would bet good money maybe aren't as productive at home because they do slot into the system that's been built up over hundreds of years because it's for them. So maybe they aren't. And, someone like you or I mean, no one cares if you or I wrote a book or did a comedy show. We're self-evidently able to work without anyone caring if we finish our work and with absolutely no incentive or guarantees whatsoever. Most people aren't like that. So if you try and claim that, the first thing the person in charge thinks is, well, then I'll have to let everyone pretend that they can do their work on their own without me bullying them. So it's a kind of morale of the troops panic, I think. It's everything will be thought of with the majority. So then you have to have a thing of permission slips where you have to get your piece of paper, and that's complicated by the fact that there's no diagnostic support in vast swathes of the country. You're going to wait 5-6 years to get your autism diagnosis as an adult, on average, something like that. Yeah,
But that reminds me of Samina Zara, who used to be based in the UK, and she's now based in New Zealand. And she said the huge difference she found of moving to New Zealand as an artist compared to being in the UK, she said, was if you come up with an idea, the first thing they say is, oh yeah, I wonder how we could do that. Whereas I think the UK thing is very much like, if you come up with an idea, they go, no, I don't think we'll be able to do that. There'll be a lot of ramifications. Well, can we just imagine for a moment? Can we, it's what my friend Jamie and Lion, who's the person who diagnosed me, Jamie is autistic and Lion is his plushie that goes everywhere with him. And he said there's this kind of ramp culture which people just go, oh my God, we've got to build a ramp, I can't believe it. And you think, well, actually, it's quite a simple thing to build more often than not. And if you'd spent as much time, as you have saying, we can't do this, then we'd not only have a ramp, you'd have also built a new block of thing. There'd be a library over there. That's this immediate, again, anything that's a change is something that is immediately resisted. It's like, I used to say this about veganism. Like, one of the things with veganism is I've heard far more people banging on about how vegans bang on than I've ever heard vegans bang on. Because the first reaction in our culture is to go, no, not fair, and actually, no. As opposed to, tell me about your mind. That's interesting. So that's how you see the world. As opposed to, well, you shouldn't be seeing the world like that. No. Gav, you've moved there, so that must mean it's questions time.
I was just subtly looming.
Yeah. Oh, I like that looming. Like that? It was like an Alfred Hitchcock cameo.
That's a bit harsh, Robin, but I'll take it. Okay,
no, I wasn't meaning about you.
I know.
Oh, dear.
Here
That's
we
backfired. Now, in the old days, I'd feel terrible about that for weeks,
bad.
but now I feel much better, so I don't care.
But the thing is, being neurodivergent, I feel terrible about saying that over there, and so we're in the doom loop. But the good news is we are in questions. Now, I'm going to remind you that the books are available, and you can buy these books, and that is a brilliant place to make a long and interesting statement about what you're thinking right now. This is the question section. Let's see how many we can get through. Right, so I'm gonna go whiz around here, and I'm gonna try and get every section.
Thank you. ASD.5. I'd just like to say thank you very much. That's really, really interesting. I loved it. I've got 2 questions going around in my brain. I wonder if I should go for the funny one or the one that's actually relevant. I'll go for the relevant one. Have you heard of the veil of ignorance?
Yes, I have heard of that. Why have I heard of that?
It's a really. I work in education, and one of the things I stumbled across when getting distracted, 0.5, is this whole concept of the veil of ignorance. Is that you approach everything being ignorant of what everyone requires, so therefore you provide everything.
Oh, the political philosopher has deliberately see every citizen as a blank category.
Yes, that's it.
I can't remember his name.
Yeah, and it just kind of made me think about when you were talking about wouldn't it be sort of the New Zealand mindset as opposed to the British mindset? No, never, no, too much. I mean, could it be done? Could we end up sort of entering the veil of ignorance and make ignorance actually a positive thing?
Yeah, I think that's sorry, go on.
It's possible, but what's difficult is when you get a situation where if you say, let's imagine a small company that sells widgets internationally, and the manager of the office of the company that sells widgets is quite busy selling widgets, then to expect him or her or them to also be able to apply veil of ignorance philosophy to their approach is something that maybe is a bit beyond them, so then they end up hiring someone whose job that is, and already we're inflating costs for the business and things like that. So I think it is possible, but I think like a lot of nice things, like a good teacher or a kindly priest or something, it's going to come down to luck as to how effectively it's applied. But you could definitely make sure everyone's aware of it, and then after that it would be dice rolls, I think.
You don't have to declare your neurodivergence, but it's a safe place to do so.
But it may be held against you if you fail to.
Yeah, or lie. Try something out new.
Hi, Robin. I just wanted to ask, would you prefer to have not had ADHD or to have had ADHD?
I see what you're doing there. I would definitely. I'm very happy with the head that I have, the mind that I have now. but I would have, and I don't think even when, because it's just impossible to imagine. It's like, Brian Cox finds it, he cannot understand that some people don't have quiet periods in their mind. It's like beyond his comprehension, because with him, he's either thinking about physics for a bit, or if he sees a piano, playing a bit of Debussy or whatever he does, and the rest of the time is kind of this blissful silence. And actually, I think it's an interesting thing that there's a lot. So I don't think I'd like. I mean, again, it's just I think I can get a lot more done by having this brain.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of happy with that.
Yeah. Is that why his voice is like that?
Yeah.
That's why he's so calm.
Yeah.
Because it's calm inside.
Yeah. Oh, am I opening and closing my mouth now?
No wonder. Okay.
Hi, thank you both. It's such an amazing talk. I will happily disclose I'm an autistic woman, and a lot of what you're speaking about, kind of disability theory and that sort of stuff, I really relate to. I'm a workplace neuro-inclusion consultant, and half of that, most of that, is getting workplaces to realise that disability is not a diagnosis. Legally, it's a protected category that if your life is impacted in some way, shape or form, you are disabled. But that's not my question, I'm just being greedy, sorry. As an autistic person, I know that unmasking is quite frankly a bin fire. And I know that a lot of my kind of friends might use it strategically. You mask in some situations, you kind of anticipate whether or not that's going to be safe. And I was kind of interested from your point of view in your creative processes. Have you transitioned from, actually at one point in my life that was me masking and now I creatively unmask? Or have you noticed, actually, that was always me unmasking, that was me at my most authentic always?
Well, I can say that I don't think mine was so much about it. The masking I was doing was about all the negative thoughts in my head. So that's what I never revealed. So the perpetual anxiety was something I never spoke to anyone about. Things like suicidal thoughts as well, and long periods of time with that, and also depressive periods. So what I masked was my emotional inner life. I don't think in some ways I wasn't masking my personality. I was just not revealing. And in the same way, I wouldn't bang on about it now either, but I'm also, there's a lovely thing that I found writing this book called Confident Vulnerability, which is where just sometimes in certain situations you think, do you know what, I'm going to explain now what I'm going through. Like the other day I was doing a gig and I just had about 3 days where I'd had a kind of a down like I'd not had really for 4 years. And when I started talking, I was being interviewed, and I just said, "I'll just say no. By the way, I hope we have fun with this. I've just had a bit of a period of time where I've just been on a bit of a down. So if at any point you think, my emotions are a little bit rawer than normal, and then I just got on with doing what I was doing. But I just put it out there, and I thought it's there. I'm not trying to hide it. And then when you do that, and it's like you can then hold it with you're not allowing someone else to manipulate you. Not that would happen in that situation, but of course in a lot of work situations, and indeed in relationship situations, very often they're very imbalanced, and if someone believes that they're a bad person or not good enough, or that then that will be used against them. And the power that comes from, you can stop doing that now, because a bit like my relationship that I used to have with Ricky Gervais when we went on tour. If anyone's ever seen those DVDs, that was actually almost entirely based on bullying and a power structure. And now we don't talk at all. Yeah. And life's so much better. But it is, So I think that was my kind of masking, if that answers that. But I also think you're right about saying, when people talk about why do you want a label, and I know some people, and as you were saying, sometimes you go, do you know what? In this situation, I'm not going to reveal anything. And because I was chatting to a woman, she said, not everyone knows that I'm autistic at the company I work with, but when it does come to the Christmas party, I go, can't go. Yeah, there we go. And, that kind of thing.
It can be strategic. I mask more consciously when I mask. I call it diplomat mode. You have to be at like a friend of a friend's birthday or something, which is like an assault course. You just go, okay, engage diplomat mode. And I just ask people questions. I sort of channel a kind of arms behind my back Prince Philip sort of. Well, what do you do? I don't. I don't reveal anything about myself. I play
and
a
then
game.
you're very racist as well, aren't
Yes,
you? I mean,
yeah.
you do the full routine, don't you?
I find if I do that, people have no questions about autism at all.
Yeah.
If I do a Saturday night rough gig in a comedy club, I won't mention autism. But if I do a comedy gig at like, it's a comedy club on Tuesdays, but otherwise it's an indie music venue, and okay, this is a safer place to do that. So it's strategic. But demasking is difficult. Some people, they start to notice things like you fiddle more and things like that, and they just have to adjust to it. But yeah, there is a period I found of about 6 months where you go, well, what do I actually want to do that, or am I pretending for 20 years that I want to do that? It's sticky, yeah, it's difficult. But yeah, strategic, I'd say.
We're in the rapid-fire, deeply thoughtful response part of the question and answer session.
Okay.
Hi, autistic, ADHD, and dyspraxic, maybe as a prize for that. But my question is, I think it's very, very welcome, and I think it's very timely that people are beginning to see the advantages and benefits and potential of neurodiversity. But I think one of the worries I have about it is, how do we stop it being something that's commodified and exploited rather than appreciated?
That's, I mean, I think everything, that's a battle we all have, whatever the skill set might be, whatever our mind is, which is that we live in a culture which is trying to commodify everything, that everything is about how can we use, it's like sometimes you'll find many of the most interesting comics who've been groundbreaking are not the ones who then actually make it through, because someone steals their idea and they'll never get asked to do that idea because they might give away. So I think what we have to be is always aware of the way that the system itself is, that it is desperate when it sees a possibility. It's like when we look at all those companies that will have, mental health weeks and all of that kind of stuff, and then you actually see that that's great for their marketing and to get them on the high street, but for 51 weeks of the year, sometimes they're not really that interested at all. I mean, like, I will say again about the BBC, is one of the reasons that I had a thing where they said that they believed I had mental health problems was because I'd written very carefully a piece about suicide and suicidal thoughts, and they said, oh, we thought you might be suicidal. I'm like, well, hang on a minute, if you'd read that you would know that's not what that was. And I also think, and I felt that if you have that opinion in the workplace, then that scares people off writing about that. And I think on that issue, I think it's a very important issue that people know that these thoughts are far more common than we would imagine. So I think we always, that battle will always be there. And I think the main thing is for us to be alert and to also make sure that we're good allies and that we have good allies with us as well. Yeah, that kind of comradeship, I think, is really important.
Yeah, yes, agreed.
Getting a diagnosis of ADHD is, it was very, very hopeful for me, very positive, but I think I was really naive thinking that the context that I work and live in would share that kind of narrative, but there was a lot of narrative like tragedy, deficit, and it wasn't shared. How I felt about it wasn't shared. And I was just thinking, so speaking up to those in kind of relative power to ourselves can be really harmful. And I was just thinking, how might we work together to be heard and not just allowed to speak, but truly heard for our experiences. And I was just thinking that might mean that people, there's a lot of denial and discomfort from other people, but it needs to happen. But I think we've all at different relative levels of power, and how do we? I don't know. How do we keep speaking?
I think one of the things is it is about, so much of it is about speaking up, and for those of us who do have a platform as well, to make sure that we use it as wisely as possible. Because I think there are, as you said, we've still got a lot of kind of negative views. We've also got a lot of kind of just nodding and then moving on. And I think that it is about the more, I mean, I imagine there will one day be a world where a lot of autistic people and a lot of ADHD people would never even have a diagnosis, because that happens if you make the world wider and you make the sky wider and you make it so, hang on a minute, so many of the social rules and society rules and the rules of business and all of those things are not fit for purpose for the variety of minds. And if they then go, well, everyone's got to behave in the way we want you to, then, well, if we lose those what they might consider to be disobedient minds, then we lose an enormous, so many of the leaps in our society come from neurodivergent thinking, and yet it's still looked down upon, I think, in a lot of places.
Yes, I think that's right. And I think in terms of leaps forward, it just comes from invoking your legal rights, which in the UK we're not very good at doing. For example, you have a right to a second opinion. You have a right to all sorts of things on the NHS, but there's a patient's bill of rights, but I've never heard anyone mention it. When I tell people there is one, they look at me like I've lost my mind. And if you work somewhere where they don't take you seriously, then you need to find a delicate balance between playing the game through HR, who don't actually work for you, they work for the company, and open legal threats. And that's not easy to do, but that's the only way that I think it has changed a lot, though. I think HR culture takes this stuff very seriously because there is such legal power behind it. But you have to take advantage of that if it's there. And if you don't take advantage of it, no one's going to press the buttons for you. You have to make them do it, or at least make noises like you're maybe going to do it, and then they'll panic and help you. But yeah, you have to poke them in the chest, I think.
We've got time for one more. I did make a promise up here for this section. Sat patiently in the dark, and there's thorough answers to all the questions contained in both of their books.
Yeah, yes.
So, in a lot of especially older media, there's a lot of negative depictions towards neurodiversity. For example, there's a Disney show where a character wants to go get an autism diagnosis or gets an autism diagnosis, and the character reacts like he's gotten this terminal diagnosis. Or there was the Rain Man, and every piece of media with an autistic person was they're this savant and they're so clever and they can do this, or they can't do anything and they need help. Was there any movie like that or TV show you watched and you were like, I know this is negative, but I relate to this character even if the representation itself isn't good?
Negative depiction that I related to. I guess whenever they think Sheldon Cooper is annoying in Big Bang Theory, I think he's correct. Just let him sit in the chair. It's his chair. It's his flat. Why are you being, just move. It means the world to him and nothing to you. What do you lose by this? I don't know. I think maybe the occasional supervillain logic sometimes is quite autistic logic, where you go, well, I don't like it, but he's not. The logic of what he's saying does track, I hope he loses, but I'm not saying he doesn't make any sense. How about you?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you're right. In terms of, it's interesting when you were saying that and you were mentioning Rain Man, it reminded me of something that Rosie Jones said recently, who's a wonderful comedian and doing an incredible amount in terms of, I mean, it's that terrible thing, isn't it, which she's doing a huge amount in terms of disability, visibility and disability rights. And if you see the kind of abuse that she gets, it says there's something really wrong in it. But when she said the trouble with so many things is the character trait becomes this person's autistic, this is their character, as opposed to this person has a character, they are autistic, but they also have a character. They're not, and I think that's the same in a lot of different ways. That kind of media, there's and basically what Rosie was saying really was kind of like so. Anyway, this character, he's very angry, she's very passionate, they're in a wheelchair, and it's like, oh, but hang on a minute, So I mean, I think for me, most of it was the comedians that I grew up with, because the comedians that I grew up with, so many were incredibly anarchic and strange, and I would watch that, and I was really, really drawn to that. And it's to have someone like Rick Mayall or Robin Williams or any of those people when I was growing, I was like 10 years old. That was a great help.
Yeah.
That's the way with
You had a question down there, by the way,
People have
and we
bits
didn't
to
have
get to.
time to take
Yep.
it. So if you do
Of
want to
course.
ask it afterwards, please feel free to ask that question.
Would that we could stay. Thank you so much to Robin, Pierre. They're going to be outside for a bit. They're not rushing off. And let's give them the Bradford Literature Festival. Thanks.